Hello, everyone. Thank you for staying with us here on Global Television. We're live in Abuja, Nigeria's capital. I'm Uyagmofwegbe. 23 years into a new millennium, we have seen young people change the narrative across several critical sectors, whether it's fintech, tech itself, agriculture, politics, leadership, education, and health, just name it. Today, we want to have a conversation about how young people are taking their own destinies in their hands and carving a future forward for not just themselves, but for the world across their various spheres of influence. That's the conversation we want to have here on Global Television today. And we are believing that you will not only be inspired, but you'll find some very informative elements to help you guide your decisions as well as a young person somewhere in Nigeria or across Africa, as you also make very important decisions about your life and indeed your career. We want to talk about all of these right after this short break. Don't go away. I have two young people with me on the show today, but I'm talking with one of them first, and the second one will be featured in the course of this discussion today. Fatima Yaya is an architectural design graduate from Parsons School of Design, New York City in the United States. Fatima, thank you for coming on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right, great to have you. I understand you're in Nigeria right now for your National Youth Service Corps, and of course, you're here to serve your fatherland, as they say. But let's begin with the decision that, what informed your decision to study architectural design as a lady, for example?
Okay. So I think I grew up very cultured. So I come from the House of Fulani tribe. I grew up in Kaduna. So I was very interested in the kind of architecture we had growing up, like the vernacular architecture, the sand, the beautiful emir houses in Kano and Kaduna. And I've always had kind of an inclination towards art and math and physics. So when I went to school, it just kind of felt like a natural progression into architecture.
I can imagine. But then, some persons will be curious and they're wondering, hold on a second, why didn't Fatima study this same course somewhere within a local university in Nigeria?
I think I wanted to get kind of like a broadened spectrum of learning. So going to the United States felt like a good option because I could learn from different change makers around the world and bring that back home and also implement what I've learned as well as my background. So I thought a mix would be good for me.
So I'm sure you will not be, you'll be very comfortable sharing with us what your experiences were while you were studying all the way in the US. Of course, no doubt, you would have met a whole number of Nigerians who also were studying with you. And then it was a different environment altogether, given that you are from the northern part of Nigeria. So talk to us about that culture shock that you felt when you got to New York.
I think New York is a very bustling city. So coming from Nigeria, where everything is moving a bit slower and going there, everything is fast paced. That was a lot to get used to. But like you said, I met a lot of good Nigerians there that helped me assimilate. And,
right.
It didn't feel like I was too far from home because I had a lot of Nigerian friends.
People have always talked about the problems with our education sector because they believe it's better out there in the so-called developed world. Of course, New York is the financial capital of the world. Some of the best schools, Ivy League schools, colleges, they are basically in New York, including, several of them actually. But without calling names, I want to talk about how that you have probably learned lessons while you were schooling in New York City, and then you are wondering how those lessons compare with the realities of graduates, young graduates, your age brackets, who also graduate from Nigeria.
So I would say that some of it is a bit similar. I think definitely in New York, the job market is as difficult as you would expect in a bustling city like New York City. But same as in Nigeria, it's really difficult to find a job here as a recent graduate. The market is very difficult. So I would say in that way, those are the similarities I've learned. And as well, I think in New York, the reason why I really wanted to go there particularly is because I wanted to learn more about sustainability. I think we're missing a lot of that in Nigeria. So I wanted to get that kind of knowledge from the people who are best at it and bring it back and kind of see how we could better the Nigerian system here?
Back at home in Nigeria, we're very challenged in the housing sector. I mean, as a broadcast journalist, I've covered the housing sector for a while. So I understand that there's so much of gap that we need to cover within the housing space, construction industry, as we call it. I'm sure even while you were in the US studying, you would have heard about several incidences of building collapse back at home in Nigeria. And we've had to do the blame game. We blame it today on the architects, tomorrow we'll blame it on the regulators, the next day we'll blame it on the developers, and so on and so forth. So the long and short of the story is that our construction sector back at home is very challenged. There's so much of knowledge deficits, there's so much of regulatory laxity, and so on and so forth. As a young person who has stepped into this field right now, how do you hope to contribute very maximally going forward?
I think kind of how you said that there's a lot of laxities, and I think that's what I'm here to, I guess, change. I want to follow the rules by the book in a sense, and I want to encourage people to also do that, because building and the construction industry is a very important, and it's a safety hazard to have people just kind of do whatever they want without any repercussions.
Right.
So I think kind of driving that narrative forward, that it's important to follow the rules and do it no matter how long it might take. It's important that the quality is ensured in design.
You know, there are young people now who are probably disappointed in you because they feel, I mean, why would you on earth come back to Nigeria? Why didn't you just stay back in New York and do your thing, practice, live your life there, make your impact there, you know, just write your name in gold while you're practicing abroad? To what extent do you think you can make a difference back at home? Because we have our peculiar challenges, whether it's in politics, in the economy, in our social space, or even in the real estate sector, or you want to talk about the overall construction space, and so on and so forth. Nigeria is a developing economy. I'm sure you know that. It's not as advanced as the US economy where you're coming from, and so on and so forth. So do you see the demand to transition as a challenge for you?
I think for me coming back, definitely, I feel like not coming back home would be a disservice to also not only my family and like the people who have put me through school. It would be a disservice to Nigerians as well, because a lot of Nigerians do leave and don't come back because they say that there's better opportunities there. But I think I disagree. I would say that there are more opportunities here in Nigeria because, as you said, we are a developing country and there's a lot more that we can do. And I think we have a lot more space for change than I would have anywhere else.
Do you sit back for a minute and you look over your shoulder and you say to yourself, if I have decided to study in Nigeria, maybe, who knows, in a public university, like a public government-owned university, do you think you would have learned as much today as you have been able to gather going abroad? Because here we have disruptions in our calendar, academic calendar. That is, 1 minute is the ASU strike, which is as a result of the unionism, the union issue, labor issue within the university system amongst the teaching staff and the government. On the other hand, you could have some universities just shutting down because there's some sort of clash on campus. Somehow you are now spending maybe 8 years studying a course that's originally designed for 4 years. Do you think ultimately you still would have had as much advantage today if you studied in Nigeria as you now do, having studied abroad?
I think, just like you said, there are a lot of difficulties and challenges. I think I would maybe have had the same amount of knowledge, but it would have just taken me a longer time to get there. Like you said, I have a lot of friends who have also been into public universities, private universities here in Nigeria, and they still haven't completed their degrees, and we started at the same time, which is unfortunate. So I think I do have an advantage in the sense that I got it done in time, and I can come back and start making changes young. But I think the quality of it, a lot of the schools are very good, and I think I could still have gotten the same amount of knowledge, but experience-wise, I think I benefited a lot having gone to the US, because there are a lot of opportunities for me to have done like internships, to work with other individuals in my sector, and to actually make active change in my community that I was in. So
you mentioned the term sustainability a while ago, right? So when you look at the Nigerian ecosystem now, as it has to do with the construction industry, do you think we have been able to incorporate that much elements into how we build, how we develop in Nigeria? We are at the threshold of drastically turning the tide around for our construction industry, whether it's bridges or what you call the freeways, highways, and so on and so forth. We want to be able to change how we approach infrastructure in Nigeria, physical infrastructure. That is, do you think we are acknowledging the importance of sustainability enough in Nigeria?
I think we're starting to, but we're not there yet.
Are we fast enough?
No, I don't think so. I think with climate change, especially now, we definitely have to be considering sustainability a lot more, especially with our use of materials like concrete and how much of a carbon footprint it leaves. We need to start considering better materials to use, and also the impact it's making on our environment is really important.
I'd like us to talk about, so much more about climate change and the impact it has on humans and basically your sector, the infrastructure sector. But that will be right after this break. We'll talk a little more about all of those and much more. Stay with us. We appreciate you staying with us, everyone. Thank you so very much. I'm still talking with Fatima. Yeah. So I just want to, before we wrap it up now, all right, with you, so we can get your friend back, on the set. Let's talk about the issue of climate change a bit further, right? We're now seeing governments across the world responding to the adverse impacts of climate change, whether it's China today, Australia tomorrow, US, the data follows. We've seen Britain, Germany, Switzerland, and even South Africa and some countries across the African continent now responding very positively. But in a place like Nigeria, it will appear the conversation hasn't quite changed so much. So how do we as a government and as a people begin to appreciate the element of climate change and then wire that into somehow how we build and how we sustain our development here?
Actually, it's interesting that you say that because I think Nigeria is going to be part of the G20 summit happening very soon that's going to be talking a lot about climate change and ways that we can start implementing that into our daily lives. But I think Nigerians, for one, can do that at a smaller level as well. So in terms of like energy management and energy saving, we could start implementing that in our homes and stuff like that. So I think you could start it at a smaller scale with like recycling, energy management, energy efficiency. But at a larger scale, definitely we have to look at our materiality, our use of energy and power, and where we put our money into. I think that's the biggest factor we need to start with.
I'd like us to switch to something a bit more personal now, career profile and how you carve a future forward for yourself as a person, right? Today in Nigeria and across the world, we now hear about this so-called Gen Zs, right? Yeah, so people pride themselves, young people, maybe ages 13 up on the way till maybe 24, 25, they say they are Gen Zs. That sounds like a chieftaincy title in Nigeria, even though it's not actually. But then let's talk about how this generation differs from the ones before them. What they can be learning by way of building capacity in whatever sphere they are in. Not all of them will be in architecture, design like yourself. Some will be in creative industry. Some will be in, of course, that's media like I am. Some will be in health and maybe others in the academia and so on and so forth. What should they be learning beyond entertainment and shaking the backside and so on and so forth? So to build capacity, build competence, be able to acquire that requisite skill sets to make a difference in their world.
I think definitely they need to be more proactive. I think our generation is a lot more proactive than previous ones, especially in like current affairs and world affairs, where you can see us like on social media, especially we're very loud and we're very proud about our stances.
Right.
We don't hesitate to talk about it, but I think definitely taking learning opportunities as they come. I think you can learn from even people in your small circle, in your small environments, like your elders as well. You can take a lot of information from them, but also take charge of, I think, your life and see like different opportunities that you can take on a smaller scale and also in a larger scale that can help you better your understanding of different issues.
Across the world now, there's conversation around gender inclusion. So women say we are marginalized against. We've got to have a voice. Give us a seat at the table. Do you think, as a young lady, do you think women have enough seats at the table already?
Definitely not. And I think definitely not in Nigeria as well. I think we're just starting that conversation truly about inclusion and equality in terms of the workplace. So I think there's definitely a lot more that can be done So
I can imagine. But then Nigeria is a bit peculiar, if you like, because of our cultural difference, our ethnic and religious differences, and then so on and so forth. But what should young people be learning now? Because there's this element of mentoring. You've got to be mentored by, I'm sure you have been mentored, maybe you are still being mentored. Talk to us about how mentoring has also shaped your career to this point and how you hope it will make much more difference in your life as you make progress.
I think actually my mentor is my father, I would say. I think he's definitely taught me a lot about the climate of Nigeria, especially being far removed. It's important to have somebody that will draw you back in and tell you, okay, these are the realities of things. This is what your capacity can allow you to do, and this is where you also need to be proactive and make your own seat at the table. Because sometimes I think people expect the seats to be created for them, but you could do that yourself. I think mentoring has definitely helped me a lot. I think also in his businesses, I've learned a lot about conversing with people, also creating connections and networking, especially being back in Nigeria. I know how important that is to create kind of a community for yourself that can support you, I guess, in whatever you need to do.
In the last couple of years, we've seen many Nigerians who come to the US in particular, of course, to other parts of the world, Europe, Asia, and so on and so forth, by way of maybe fellowship, some sort of internship, some sort of seminars, and so on and so forth. And then they want to come back home to see how they can replicate that, how they can deploy that to change the narrative across different sectors. We've also seen those who probably do not want to come back. They'll rather remain in the US because they feel the opportunities there are more promising than they have back at home. Today, Nigeria has just seen some 24 years into democracy, so we are still evolving and so on and so forth. But back at home, we have over 300,000 SMEs, small, medium enterprises across this country. Interestingly, the bulk of them are owned by young people. How would you encourage them to stay put, to hang in there, regardless of all the obstacles they have to grapple with every day?
I think I would want to implore young people to understand that, I guess, your first goal won't necessarily be your best try, I guess. I think every goal that you have is going to be a learning opportunity. So even if it doesn't work the first time, keep going, especially because we're young, and it's amazing that our young people are going forward, starting businesses, having young businesses. So I think definitely keep going. Different trials you have are going to keep encouraging you, and you're going to keep learning from them. So.
Can imagine. Yeah. They say if you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. Is that true?
I would hope so, yes.
All right, some people say Lagos, Nigeria, which used to be our capital as a country, like our federal capital, all right? Of course, now it's our commercial capital. We understand Lagos is the 5th biggest economy on the soil of Africa, which means if Lagos were to be a country, it will be the 5th biggest economy on the face of this continent. But then New York, some persons will say, does not compare to Lagos on many fronts. I mean, some of the biggest banks in the world are domiciled in Manhattan in New York. Of course, you have some of the biggest businesses, investment bankers, they're basically in New York. So you don't compare with Lagos. But for those who say Africa is rising, and of course, when they say that, they're looking at Nigeria in particular, all right, what lessons can we be learning from big cities like New York, from big economies like the US, to encourage young people, to make them realize that you don't have to be in the US, neither do you have to particularly be in New York for you to be able to have some visibility and find traction?
I think what I learned specifically about New Yorkers when I was there is that young people are very proactive.
Right.
And I think that's just that we can implore here in Nigeria. I think we are as well, Nigerians are very proactive individuals. So I think continuing that forward, just keep learning, I would say. Because when I was in New York, I had to do a lot of internships. I was trying my best to soak up as much knowledge as I could before coming back. And I think that same level of energy and enthusiasm for what you're doing is what's going to be important. Because people who are there because they want to be there and they believe in themselves and they believe in what they're doing. So I think as long as you're very empowered in what you're doing and you believe in your mission or whatever opportunity it is you're looking to do or to go into, you'll be successful.
Right.
Yeah.
I understand you're in the middle of your National Youth Service Corps right now. So would you like to share with our viewers what your experience has been for somebody who did not school here, basically?
It's been really insightful, I would say. I think it's amazing that I get to do this opportunity now while I'm young, because I get to meet a lot of people my age who have studied here in Nigeria, who have had different experiences from me, and I'm learning a lot from them as well. It's been a really interesting experience, I would say. I've enjoyed it so far.
I'm hoping by the time you wrap it up, after a 1 year period, we get to have this conversation again and see how far you've come. But in the meantime, I want to talk to you quickly about your plans. Do you hope to practice in Nigeria?
Yes, I do. So after I'm done with my NYSC, I would hopefully continue on and get my master's degree, and then I'll be able to practice here in Nigeria as an architect. Yes.
Great. Incidentally, I've spoken with a couple of architects here, particularly with the leadership of the Nigerian Institute of Architects, NIA, and I realize they're doing so much of amazing work. They have their own sort of college, so to speak, where architects are, if you like, trained, certified. They're given the tools, right, that they need to practice and so on and so forth. But how much do you understand about the construction industry in Nigeria, basically?
I think I'm starting to understand more. As I'm doing my NYSC, I'm also working with an architecture firm here in Nigeria as an intern, so as to like understand better the framework that we have here, because it's definitely different as it is in New York. Like zoning regulations, building regulations, I'm still kind of getting a hang of that. Especially also measurements too, I found a bit difficult because I've learned in a completely different scale. Than here in Nigeria. So it's been interesting to learn also what the Nigerian, I guess, I would say the young people in Nigeria are looking for in architecture has changed from what we've known of it
over time.
So I'm definitely learning more as the year is going by.
Have you been bothered about some negative things that you hear about Nigeria and Nigerians? I mean, the way our system works. I mean, how much of negativity have you heard about us? How much has that shaped how you perceive this country?
I wouldn't say I've heard a lot of negativity per se, but I think one thing is in terms of efficiency. I think we could be a bit better in terms of how the system works and getting things done faster could be better. But I think in general it's been pretty positive since I've been back.
All right. So lastly, I'd like us to talk about how you settle in ultimately, and then how you want to make your impact. Because yes, you're basically an architect, but not everybody wants to, if you like, develop buildings or structures and so on and so forth. Some people want to end up in government, so maybe by appointment, or they want to join the traditional civil service and they want to rise through the ranks and so on and so forth. How exactly do you want to play this? Is it as a consultant, or you want to be in the academia? How exactly do you want to just to be a player in the sector?
Well, I definitely want to start as like an architectural designer and move my way up, but I am also very much interested in charitable courses. So I wanted to probably maybe in the near future start maybe an NGO to help young Nigerians and also to help the underdeveloped communities with architecture and like buildings, because I found that there are a lot of people who are living in horrible conditions which could be supported. So definitely creating a space for that is what I wanted to do.
You know, if I forget everything you said in the last 24 minutes, I won't be in a hurry to forget the area where you talked about charitable causes. I'm sure right now Nigeria and indeed Africa needs so much of that, right, to be able to pull people out of poverty on the one hand, on the other hand, give them the tools that they need to better their lives. So rather than give them fish, you teach them how to fish.
Exactly.
All right, Fatima Yaya, thank you for coming to talk to us today. Fatima Yaya is an architectural design graduate from Parsons School of Design in New York and the United States. She's in Nigeria now because she's a Nigerian, let's be clear, and she's doing our National Youth Service. When she finishes, by the grace of God, next year, we'll have this conversation again.